before we get further into it, why don't
Yeah.
we just real quick, you want to just take a minute and kind of introduce yourself and your practice and who you are and what you do and kind of give a little context to our listeners for things.
Okay. So my name is Dr. Kyra Haring. I have been practicing vet medicine since 1997. I graduated from University of Florida. I have my own private practice in Glens Falls. I've worked at a number of different practices in um, the the region down to Albany when I've done a lot of per diem work prior to owning my own practice. A lot of times they come to my house, but other times they may go to my counterparts here in my office. A lot of times they'll adopt them as well. But that's my favorite thing. The only reason well, let me backpedal. The reason I loved having a private practice was I could also mesh that aspect of what I love to do, along with having the client communication. You lack that when you're
Mhm.
doing solely shelter type medicine. You're not getting that relationship with your clients, which is wonderful. I love to, get the context of, who are these people that love these animals and try to build relationships. It's really, incredibly rewarding. And so I've had this practice since 2006. Um, I work by myself, soon to be with two young, eager new graduates, which is going to be amazing. Something that is lacking, has been lacking. And I'm always told it's because the funding isn't there. So I've done a little bit of my own legwork to kind of look into the reality of that. And it really comes down to, unfortunately, I need the town board members to jump on board with the concept of at least acknowledging you've let these animals down. Unfortunately, when you do this, you're complicit indirectly in animal neglect. You haven't provided these animals with the framework to stay safe. You don't allow people who may be less unfortunate financially to care for animals to surrender those animals into a safe space. And so we end up with these animals that may be dumped on the street, or worse than that, maybe they're abused as well. Um, so I've come to be aware that we need to get the acknowledgement from the town board members that there is an issue here. Let's open our eyes to this. Let's work together. Let's talk to law enforcement officials, talk to the sheriffs, talk to the troopers. What's really going on? What is the safety network that these animals have? And you're going to find it's very poor structure. And they're very frustrated. They have nowhere to turn. When I say they, the law enforcement officials.
Mhm.
And if the town board members allow things to move to the next level, I'll say, where they acknowledge, yeah, we have a need. Where there's a need, there will be financial backing that we can apply for through both the federal and state level. So it's not accurate or acceptable, I guess I should say, or kind to say that the funding isn't there. We need to first open our eyes that there's a problem and then do something about it, get to the next level, and then figure the other parts out. But the first part takes awareness on the part of the community. People I come across in my vet practice um, that are just blown away when they are told that. And as a vet for years and years, I have been working with three counties, Saratoga, Warren, and Washington,
Mhm.
um, for investigators, different law enforcement. I've testified in grand jury for neglect cases, abuse cases, and it's crazy the number of abuse cases that are really coming to the forefront right now, which is good to get a little bit of traction here, but I just don't want it to just die. I don't want this to be for nothing that these animals were abused and, their part of their stories brought forward and landed three of them in my office. Like, I want this to actually be for something. Like, for me as a vet, that is part of the community, but also as a vet, also as an animal lover, also now as an animal advocate, I kind of really want to start to get actively seeking the attention from the town board members to make a change.
Hmm.
And they cry poverty, but that's not a good excuse. That's a terrible excuse for the lack of a shelter in these two counties. So
Okay.
it's kind of all of that. And so the petition was started in particular for a Whitehall, Washington County case that came on my doorstep. When a trooper had nowhere to turn, it took over 400 days for this to come to light. 400 days of this man's property with animals being abused. It took 400 days for anything to happen. And they brought the three worst cases to me. And those three animals are still under my care since August 30th. And that's because there's no shelter to take them from the injured phase, taking the call from law enforcement, doing something with that phone call, being able to place those sick animals in a shelter, let
Hmm.
those animals rehabilitate, and then get proper homes.
When you say the animals are being abused, I mean, that could cover so many different things.
Right.
And it's interesting because I mean, I think I literally just today saw a case of a guy with some animals in Corinth that the state troopers had to get involved, or maybe it was the sheriff's office. I'm not sure which, but you hear animal abuse, but you don't always know what that means.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
could you maybe just maybe dive into that a little bit?
So animal abuse this is where I think also the laws really need to change. I think the DAs, prosecutors have to change what they see as abuse versus neglect versus, what's going to be a misdemeanor, what's going to become a felony, because cats are literally not even dealt with by the counties whatsoever. Dogs are deemed property. So as property value, that's a really, really ugly notion to think that, for instance, dogs that were in this boarding facility in Argyle, all those 21 dogs that died, and the DA slapped them with just a misdemeanor, all these dogs that died, because it was deemed that there wasn't intent to harm these animals. Well, if you're going to care for animals, you better darn well know how to provide them with the sustenance, the safety that they need. If somebody's paying you to care for their animals, you better know how to do that. So if a trooper or an officer is called and they go to a home and somebody has noted this dog looks like it's starving, it's so skinny. If the officer goes there and they find that the dog has a food bowl, has water provided to it, and a shelter of some form, it could be 10 below zero, but so long as it has a dog house, that's the shelter it needs. And so then they walk away. And to try to get them to follow through and say, can't you see if there's something wrong with that dog medically, is very difficult. It's difficult for law enforcement because they don't know where to turn. So they don't really even have the proper support and sequence of support to know, okay, I have a call. This is a starving, mother cat has kittens. Where do I go? Well, okay, so in Warren and Washington County, you only have dog control. You
Hmm.
have animal control, but what is really their task? They don't have a facility to have seized animals that, for instance, in this Whitehall case, they were the three that ended up here. This kitten had severe facial wounds and teeth that were knocked out. It had
Oh,
it has oral trauma. The leg was so swollen, the poor thing couldn't stand. I was confident the leg was broken, fortunately not. so these three animals were so severely flea infested that I kid you not, when they stood up from their white bedding, it was blood tinged pink and like even some of it like red from the mass number of fleas that were chewing on these animals. They're open sores, but also what we call flea dirt, which is digested blood. That's the flea's poop.
Oh,
And that's how badly infested these animals were. And so those animals came to me with uh, a bunch of issues with skin infections, malnourished, and injuries and trauma. So that's one example of an abuse case I dealt with. Plus, there were a number of other puppies and dogs there, lots and lots of stray cats. But I've also testified on cases such as a Dalmatian that was shot to death when somebody went up to a front door and just started to shoot through the front door, thinking they were going to get a human, but they got the dog instead. Um, I had to evaluate kittens that just I'm sorry for the graphics, but their heads were dislocated from their bodies. Um, I I had the nicest, one of the nicest breeds of dog is a Boston Terrier. And these two grown men who were drunk as skunks decided to say that they were terrified this Boston Terrier was going to hurt them. So instead of walking away from this vicious Boston Terrier that would only probably lick you, they took a hammer to this dog and bludgeoned it to death to the point where the poor dog had aspirated its teeth into its lungs from
oh my God.
gasping. So I've seen the most horrific of things. I've seen dogs burned to death, um, left purposefully in a home, that was torched.
Mhm.
Left. It's pretty graphic. And
Sounds
the
awful.
sad, well, yeah, it's awful because I'm here to heal animals. And then when you see that I have clients that lovingly are trying to do their best for their pets, then you see that there's this whole other population of animals that are living under this, horrific abuse, starvation, freezing cold. I've had cats that, froze to death on manhole covers. It just case after case after case. And a lot of times when I have troopers, sheriffs, police officers who are clients of mine, they'll come in and they'll complain about the fact that they have nowhere to turn, that there's no official chain of command, or that they're told not to engage on something, or more alarmingly, if they go to a call and they want to do something with it, it just falls on deaf ears as it gets to prosecution phase. And the people that did these harmful things to these animals just get away with it. And so it's just a perpetual issue. And what we all know, and we've all heard stories about, the person that's abusing these animals, they're likely also abusing humans, children, elderly, and it's really sad. Let me go back to this one abuse case that kind of really got me steamrolling. And a lot of people in Washington County are very aware of a case that just transpired, this case in Whitehall,
Mhm.
which took over 400 days for a trooper to be able to actively get the three most badly cared for, or I should say, the most abused, if we want to even talk about, which are more abused and which did we leave
Right.
behind. It's sad, but he had to take and select the three worst, bring them to me, and then again, they're still with me under my care, and then the rest were left for a period of time again until he could get further support, I think through the court, to go back onto the property to seize the other ones, the other animals. And it was a problem to figure out where to place these animals. So it was with the help of a bunch of people. And I'm not sure really, I can't say their name, who they are, because I don't really even know what that network amounted to, like which people. I just know that dog control was involved directly. There may have been animal control, but also New York Humane Association did a wonderful job as well. So several different agencies had to come forward to figure out what do we do with these other animals. Another local area vet ended up evaluating, I think it was over 30 more animals that were on that property. Now, when I posted about this on my social media, it was sad that a lot of stories came out as to what people would see driving by this property, that there were always constantly signs outside looking to sell puppies, um, puppies and young dogs that were starved being dumped over a fence line.
Mhm.
I didn't witness this, but this is what I'm informed of. Um, One sad picture that I posted was of a female dog that had literally starved to death, the poor thing, after giving birth to two sets of puppies, and only 3 out of 16 of them survived. There
Wow.
are photos taken that look like third world element, and the property looked so in disrepair, where these animals were kept sleeping on rocks, puppies sleeping on rocks, broken pieces of wood, eating out of boxes. They were eating trash, um, dried up empty water bowls. People took to get proof. They were taking photos of what was going on there. And that is coming up November 10th, I believe. Let me just double check.
The town board meeting is?
No, this is going to be this case. It's going
Oh,
to trial, and that will be this Whitehall case that I'm speaking of. And it's going to be on November 10th at 2 o'clock. It's a Whitehall hearing. And I think we need to have a lot of people show up to that. A lot of people are very angered. And there needs to be massive consequence for this individual, because this is not the first time. There and he needs to just be stopped. This abuse has to stop. But there are county board meetings that I think are really important for people to come to support the animals that can't show up to these meetings themselves, that would otherwise probably love to show up for themselves. The Washington County Board meeting, there are 2 of them. One is on November 13th, the other's on December 11th. And they placed that at a very inconvenient time of 3 o'clock. Potentially, maybe that should be an issue that they need to realize a lot of people work, but hopefully people can make those meetings. Uh, excuse me. And then there's a Warren County Board 2 meetings. One is November 21st. The other is December 19th. And again, at the inconvenient time of 10 a.m. So hopefully we can get a showing there. We don't need to have permission to come. They will have to hear stories, and I hope other people show up with their own personal stories of, the countless things I hear. I found a cat on the side of the road. It had been hit by a car. I had nowhere to turn. I footed the bill myself. I rehabilitated the cat myself. These are, very common themes that I see coming through my practice. And sometimes they are just surrendered to local area vets, and veterinarians are forced to field these calls for what should otherwise really be the shelter's issue. They should be manning these issues at a local animal shelter, county animal shelter.
so in that scenario, and like in the scenario where you've taken on these 3 animals, is the burden of care placed entirely on you? Like, do you have to pay for the food, pay for the medicine, obviously your time, which it sounds like you're happy to give. But at the same time, you only have so much time and you still do have to run a business. So
Right.
there's no support whatsoever for folks when it comes to
No.
helping these animals. So I what I what it sounds like to me, your overall objective would be to get a shelter, at least one in place to service Warren and Washington counties, which to me that's
Right.
like a monstrous footprint for one shelter. But you know, start somewhere, right? At least get
Yeah, absolutely.
one's better than none. But the challenge to that shelter is a perceived lack of funding, but it's not so much that there isn't funds available. It's just that the counties themselves have to decide that this is an issue that they want to fix, and then that
Right.
starts the process rolling to be able to start to request funding through grants or whatever it may
Right.
be. That's a fair assessment?
Yeah, yes, definitely. And I've spoken to a senator's office, Elise Stefanik's office, and they have people that are willing, once this gets going, can assist with, the next phase. Also, I'm going to be meeting with Kelly Duvall, who's part of Saratoga Animal Shelter, to
Mhm.
talk about, what did it take, to bring that facility forward. And I've heard the story from both Warren and Washington County town board members. I've spoken to them before. That it's a very wealthy county and it's very different. Well, yes, that still does not take away the reality that animals are being abused and neglected. As you said, start somewhere. You
Mhm.
don't need to have the same, type of uh, building set up immediately. You just need to do something, like start the process. Once the process is started, I fully know that people would volunteer in great numbers to try to see, these animals get the proper care that they need, come, to help care for them, that donations would be able to be sought for if, again, if there was awareness. Now, I know the
Mhm.
other issue that's going to be a big issue is right now, Washington County has a big pickle financially that they're planning on increasing the county's overall individual taxes, the community people. And that's a problem, and it shouldn't be a problem for the animals. That's not whatever happened with the mismanagement of the budget should not hit the residents as far as I'm concerned, but it also shouldn't hit the animals. Like that's not fair to still ignore a big problem that has been an age-old problem. It still needs to be something that's addressed and bring awareness and be open-minded to this problem.
Has there never been a shelter in either county?
No.
Really?
Uh, Washington County has had none. There was a number of years ago, again, don't ask me the year, the time frame, but there was a Warren County operation that was started, and something was not quite appropriate with how the finances were allocated. And it was squandered somehow, and that put a very bad taste in the mouths of the town board members. They saw this mismanagement, and at this point, they have a contract with the SPCA of Upstate New York. I'm not sure, what their title is. It's not an animal shelter. A shelter is one which takes in resident community animals, lets them house there, rehabilitate there, and then they're adopted out. There's an adoption program. I believe, again, somebody would need to, do the legwork to figure that out. um, I think they're open on a limited basis, and they work on some abuse cases for Warren County.
So I'm curious. Obviously, the shelter I think it's a no-brainer that it helps with taking in animals, rehabilitating them if needed, and then helping placement and find new homes.
Hmm.
When we first started talking, though, some of the things that you said, it sounded to me like you feel that having that shelter could also be preventative in some cases for abuse. Can you help me understand that?
So it's not so much that it would be, well, I mean, it could be in the sense that it could help with there could be educational programs, there could be low cost spay neuter programs, there could be vaccine clinics. Again, there could be situations where somebody gets down on their times and financially doesn't have the ability to afford their pet's care or food for their pet, and maybe they either seek some support, in that from that direction, or they again surrender the pet to get a better, a better opportunity. So in that aspect, it can be kind of preventative. But also preventative in the way that it's not so much that it's preventative, it is a network for a proper network. When a shelter board, the shelter board people should have the proper education into the proper laws that surround animal abuse cases, so that law enforcement officials, that's not their training,
Mhm.
that they have some place to turn to when it's this type of case like Whitehall, where they were called by a good Samaritan who says, I see, puppies abound and they're running into the street and dogs that are skinny and cats everywhere, help. And a lot of times they are kind of stopped in their tracks. They don't know, the law enforcement agents themselves, they don't know where to turn. Where do they turn when they have this? I have been told by numerous law enforcement agents when I talk with them that 9 out of 10 times when they have a situation of concern and they call dog control, 9 out of 10 times their phone call isn't addressed or picked up. So what do they do then? They can't just, start throwing a bunch of animals in their trunk and drive around with them. They need to have a place to go. They need to know that, when I have a search warrant, that once I get these 30 animals, I have a facility to bring them to. So it allows action to be taken swiftly. There should be just a sequence, a chain of, one phone call leads to this phone call, and not this wild goose chase. And then before you know it, 400 days later, these animals have been suffering because nobody could address the issue. And that's the problem.
Yeah, 400 days sounds like a lot of time.
That's yeah, I
You
mean, it's
know, it's I know you're not faulting the law enforcement here, or it doesn't
not
sound
at
like
all.
you are at all. Just sounds like their hands are kind of tied as far as what they're able to do, resources that are available. And it sounds like you feel that just having the shelter would be at least a first step to being able to create that support system for law enforcement
Right.
as well.
Absolutely.
Um, and and so it's so surprising to me that we don't have a shelter, or we don't have, because obviously this is not a new problem. Like I said, I literally just saw a post on Facebook about someone local to me that I think it involved a few dogs or something along those lines. And it seems like it's a lot more common than you would believe.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I know, like, I mean, we have 4 dogs, 2 cats. We have a farm, so we have lots of room for all those animals. But like, I'm an animal lover, and most people I think I know that have dogs treat their dogs like they treat their kids, and it's always surprising to me because I live in the world where people just love animals, and why wouldn't?
Yeah. Right.
And to think that there's this other side, the dark side
The
of,
dark side. Yeah.
yeah, that it is just absolutely, it's wild. I can't
Yeah.
fathom. I know
And
we have.
there's a big, exactly, it's a big dark side, which is really the heart-wrenching thing. I mean, it's sad. And, I guess because I'm a vet, this is what I hear. I'm unfortunately privileged to, or unprivileged, I guess, if in my mind, to know of these cases. Everybody would want to stay naive that this is going on, because it's a horrible thing to think of. Nobody wants to think of animals or children being hurt. And it's
Yeah,
sad,
yeah,
sad.
it's terrible.
Yeah.
Uh, and when you were mentioning the meetings before, it sounds like you're really trying to get people to go to these meetings and
Hmm.
to speak up and have their voices heard. What
Hmm.
what impact will that have with people going to these meetings and I don't want to say raising their voices because that makes it sound like yelling, but just
Right.
by people going to these meetings and showing a community presence, what's the outcome that you would hope for with that?
Um, I guess the outcome I hope for is that we have agreement, that the town board people can, unite, and finally say, you're right, enough is enough. It's about time that we listen to the community. And thank you, community members, for bringing this to our attention. Uh, I wasn't sure where to start. So I started as just throwing this out there on Facebook and Instagram, and now I have over 1,500 pledge signatures. I have people out there walking door to door getting signatures. Um, Again, it's just all about awareness and really letting our counties know that, at this point, I don't want to stop. I don't think, that we as residents here should stop until we finally have a safe place for these animals.
I'm glad you brought up the petition. Um, so if you're listening or watching, we're going to include a link to the petition in the show notes, whether it's on YouTube or Apple or Spotify. Um, how many? So you have 1,500 signatures on it right now. How many signatures do you need? Do you think?
I don't know. I really don't know. Like, how many signatures does it take before somebody listens to you, a politician listens to you, or it hits the right person, sparks the right conversation with somebody to say, let's blow this up. Like, we're done. I didn't know this. So let's take this down to Albany. And, I submitted my petition to Kathy Hochul. Didn't hear anything back. I'm hoping that eventually, if we keep on growing this number,
Hmm.
that we will become so many voices for these voiceless creatures. I hate to, use that common term, but they are voiceless and they're innocent. But I'm hoping at some point there are enough other voices besides my own. When I've had phone calls directly with the administrators, the county board members, they don't want to hear what I have to say. And I don't want it to be like that anymore. I don't want it to be, well, Dr. Haring, she's complaining, she wants a shelter. I don't want anything. This isn't for me. This isn't about me. Um, I I'm a vet, I'm a mother. I have like so much going on in my life. It's just, this is my passion. And right now I feel like it needs to be something that I try to see through to the end with, the outcome being so amazing for the community. Where it'll be a safer environment where law enforcement feels that they actually have a place to turn. My son is a canine sheriff, and he's spoken to me a number of times about his frustration, but they can't speak up for fear of what may come of it, I guess, politically. So it's going to take us, as the common folk, if you will, taxpayers. Our voices deserve to be heard, and we need to be there for the animals to be able to speak for them.
So it sounds to me like you're kind of a single voice yelling into oblivion here, right? Into the dark.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty
Uh,
much.
and it's just surprising that, I guess we obviously we can't put words in the mouths of the board of supervisors or whoever it is that you're getting in front of. But I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't want to help or
I
solve this
know.
problem. Do you know, like, are there reasons given as to far as why, like, it's not a priority for them to have an animal shelter in Warren or Washington County?
The reason is always financial. It's always financial. And that's the only reason they give. And that's not a sound or valid reason. That's not a good enough reason. Because again, there are ways for the county to have support from the federal state level. So I really don't think that's a satisfactory excuse for them anymore. And I find it to be a very sad reason. And I just hope things change. I'd like to see things change. And I'm grateful for the people that have signed the pledge so far, who have listened, who have taken the time to read my posts. I am not a political person in this kind of being this voice and getting these ugly posts on my social media. That's not what people want to see. They want to see, oh, look at the new puppy that we have at the clinic today. And I know that there are risks for me to publish this stuff, but for me, the reward far exceeds, the concern. Like and most importantly for me, I'm an animal lover, and I always want to have the backs of these animals that don't have anybody else. And I just hope my clients and followers appreciate that, and they're proving that is true. Like I'm growing my community, I'm getting people behind me, and it's just been such an amazing feeling.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it just takes time, I guess, right? But unfortunately,
Yeah,
with all the time that goes by, there's still animals being abused.
exactly.
Uh, and I don't know if it's just the media landscape or what it is, but I feel like I hear it more and more and more recently of cases
Mm,
of animal abuse. And again, they don't often put any kind of description on what that abuse entails. But I keep seeing it, and
yeah, yeah,
it's wild. Um,
yeah. Yeah, more and more for sure. And I just hope that, all those animals that had to suffer, at the hands of these, I don't know what type of human does this type of act, but I'll call them monsters because these poor animals, are at your mercy, and they just want love, and they're just so giving. But for these animals to have gone through what they have, for me to have done necropsies on dogs that are burned to death, I just hope that I can try to make a difference, for all the future ones, that the ones that have died at the hands of this type of disgusting abuse, didn't do it for nothing, that there's a reason that we're here having this conversation, that unfortunately it took these ugly cases to spark this conversation. And we just have to keep going with it.
I think it's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you.
It's obviously needed, not just from all the things we keep hearing about, but just knowing that there's no lack of support. I was completely in the dark about that until you reached out to me, and had no idea. I actually did not know there wasn't a shelter. I just always assumed there was one. I just didn't know where it was.
Yeah, yeah,
And because I don't ever have a need for a shelter, I just kind of gets filed away. So I hope we're able to help you get some more attention on it anyway.
thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely. And
It's been great to know that there are some people that, again, like yourself, you get the awareness, and it's like, okay, what are we going to do about this? Let's bring more awareness. And, the more one person shares it, it's just that much of a gain that we have each time.
yeah, just keep building on it.
Yeah.
So we're obviously going to put, like I said, we're going to put a link to your petition so other people can sign it everywhere we possibly can. And
Thank you.
you're welcome. but outside of that, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to learn more about you or what you're doing or how to help, how do they find you?
They can email me at Kyra Haring, fps@gmail. That's my personal email. If they would like to do that, they can also go on my For Pet's Sake Veterinary Center Facebook page or our Instagram, which I think is For Pet's Sake Vet. But they can reach out that way or by calling my office. For Pet's Sake Veterinary Center, 518-745-1177.
Okay. And then what's the website for your business as well, just in case that's helpful?
It would be under For Pet's Sake Veterinary Center.
I think I
Silly
have.
me.
What is that? fps.vet?
Sure. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, perfect.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Don't ask me anything that has to do with tech stuff, media stuff. That's not me.
That's fine. That's fine. Well, we'll make sure all that stuff is in the show notes, and
Thank you.
any help that we can offer, Kyra, we're very happy to do.
All right. Appreciate it so much.
I hope you keep
right.
at it.
Thank
it's a tough,
you. Thank you. Nice to talk with you today. And take good care of your puppies and cats. I know you will.
We do. They're pretty happy. They're pretty happy.
Good.